G'day everyone, and welcome to the video. In this one I'm going to be explaining what are franking credits and how do they work. So what are they? Well, a franking credit or an imputation credit, as they're also known, is a tax credit that's attached to a payment that is paid out of company profits to shareholders in the form of a dividend. In Australia, they were introduced in 1987 by the Hawke-Keating government. The design was to reduce double taxation and to remove the disincentive of companies paying out dividends to shareholders. So the idea was that by setting up the dividend imputation system, if profits have already been taxed at the company level, the shareholder, being you, will receive a tax credit for the tax that's already been paid at the company level for the dividends that you are now declaring in your individual tax return. Now, dividends can be paid as franked or unfranked. A franked dividend means that there is a tax credit attached to the dividend. An unfranked dividend means that there is no tax credit. And whether or not you receive a franked or unfranked dividend depends on whether the company paying the dividend has a surplus balance in their franking account or not. And without getting too caught up in the detail, because I don't want to have to bore you any more than is necessary, a company will have surplus balance in their franking account if they have paid more tax to the tax office than they have issued in franking credits to shareholders. Because the dividend imputation system was introduced in 1987, there were a lot of companies who'd been paying tax a lot longer than that, such as the big four banks. And these companies who'd been paying tax for such a long time were sitting on massive franking account surpluses, which means they have big balances of credits that they can pay out to shareholders, which is great if you're a shareholder. All right, so now I'm going to show you an example of how this plays out. Okay, so at the top here you can see a franked dividend, net dividend was paid for $500. The associated credit, the franking credit of 30%, the corporate tax rate is $214. So the individual dividend, the gross dividend, is these first two items added together to make $714. The individual pays tax in this example at 32.5%. The tax on the $714 is $232. Then they subtract the imputation credit, the franking credit, for $214, which means at the end of the day, the net payable after applying the franking credit is $18. So they have to pay $18 to the tax office here. Now, franking credits have become a bit of a political issue in the last few years, in particular in the lead up to the 2019 federal election. The argument was that retirees who were receiving tax refunds due to franking credits when they hadn't paid any tax on other sources of income was unfair and should be stopped. Okay, so now going back to the previous example that we went through just before, the reason that there is still $18 tax owing is because the company already paid tax at the corporate tax rate of 30%. And because the individual in this example is paying personal tax at the marginal rate of 32.5%, there is a shortfall of 2.5% owing, hence the $18. On the other side of the equation, if you're a low-income earner, possibly a retiree, earning less than $45,000 a year, you're only liable to pay tax at 19%, or 0% for the portion under $18,000. So if your entire income was made up of dividends, because 19% is lower than the corporate tax rate of 30%, you're going to receive a refund for the difference. The reality is that if refunds were stopped for these people, what it means that in order to cancel out the tax refund from the franking credit, the ATO would essentially be forcing the corporate tax rate onto them at 30%, even though if you're earning below $45,000, normally you'd be paying tax at 19%. That's basically where the problem arose back in 2019. And I'm not getting political here, guys. All I'm doing is painting the numbers and explaining the situation, because before the election campaign back then, a lot of people would have never heard of these funny little things called franking credits. Anyway, I hope I've helped clear a few things up, and I hope you've learned a bit more about franking credits and how they work. But that's it for the video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you learned something. Give it a thumbs down if you think I'm an idiot. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next one, whenever I can bother doing that.